Hi, this is Joe Ellison, and I'm here after a prolonged absence, which we may attribute mostly to my laziness, to read another excerpt, the fourth, from my latest novel, Mr. Lake, a pseudo King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table fantasy set somehow in the life of a sixth grader in the 1960s. In this excerpt, which is from chapter 7, called The Bookcase, we visit with our main character, Joe. Strange coincidence there. As he ruminates upon the goings-on in his sixth grade classroom. Let's start. Miss Bazarian had 2 dresses and a big hooked nose. She changed her dress every day. One day she wore the blue one, and the next day she wore the brown one. Her nose she couldn't change, ever. She was stuck with it. But she was a pretty good teacher. She didn't do much of anything to you. By the time you got to the 5th or 6th grade, the teachers didn't have the energy to go around whacking you anymore. If you did something bad enough, they sent you to the principal and let her worry about it. For little things she could handle herself, Miss Bazarian sent you to the corner. Her favorite corner was the one closest to me, right behind me, between the bookcase and the supply closet door. I sat at the last desk in the first row. From there, I could reach across the aisle and into the bookcase no sweat. Whenever I got bored, I could sneak out a book. I liked it back there. My favorite book was the annotated Sherlock Holmes. It was huge, and it came in 2 volumes, with notes up and down the margins that told you everything. My favorite Holmes story was The Red-Headed League, because there wasn't any Red-Headed League. It was a front, a con job. It faked me out, but not Sherlock. He figured Dr. Moriarty, that Napoleon of crime guy, was behind it all the time. It made me feel like a dope. But if you worry about feeling like a dope, you'll never read anything worth reading. The guys who write the good stuff are all smarter than you. If you can't live with it, you might as well stick to Pat the Pilot. I don't want you to think I spent all my time reading Sherlock Holmes. I read a lot of other books out of the bookcase too, mostly collected works. Lots of guys wrote collected works. Edgar Allan Poe, Rudyard Kipling, O. Henry, Mark Twain, Hans Christian Andersen, lots of guys. It must have been a popular thing to write way back when. But one book I never got to read, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Sheila Cooper beat me to it and hung on to it. You'd think she was trying to memorize it, but I'll get to her later. Every once in a while, Miss Bazarian caught me reading bookcase books instead of doing schoolwork. For punishment, she made me stay after and finish my work. She never made me stand in the corner for reading. I would have rathered it. It was easier than hanging around after school. But you can never tell what's going to tick a teacher off and what isn't. Larry ticked Miss Bazarian off like clockwork. He spent half his life standing in the corner. Miss Bazarian had a system. She sent you to the corner and told you to count up to some number, say 500. When you got to 500, you got out of the corner. Sometimes, when all the corners were full and there was a waiting line, she'd stop you and tell you to remember your number so she could plug somebody else in there. Because of where I sat, I knew all the guys standing in the corner. I sized up Larry right off the bat. He cheated. He'd count by 5s under his breath, or he'd skip some numbers. So when Miss Bazarian asked him, "Larry, what's your number?" he'd answer, 420. But he was lying. He'd only be up to 80 or so. Lying always bothered me. I could never get away with it. People could see right through me. But Larry could lie like a trooper. Makes sense. When you do something all the time, you're bound to get pretty good at it. The following Monday, when we got back to school, Larry was standing in the corner of something he did the Friday before. He was humming to himself, not counting a single number. I decided to yank his chain. I whispered out of the side of my mouth so Miss Bazarian couldn't see my lips moving. "Hey, Larry." I surprised him. Usually it was him talking to me when he was in the corner, trying to get me in trouble. But I turned the tables on him. His answer came back too loud. "What do you want?" "Keep it down," I whispered back. "You'll get us both in trouble." "I'm already in trouble," he went back to humming. I talked out of the side of my mouth again. "You'll be in worse trouble." He gave me the finger behind his back. "I mean it," I whispered. "Piss me off, and people will find out you shit your pants last Saturday night and ran like a baby from a cat." He turned with a look that said, "You'll pay for this later." But things that happen later, you worry about later. Pulling his chain was too much fun right then and there, 'cause he couldn't do anything about it. "Yeah," I said again, "people will find out." "You little shit," he said to me without moving his lips. "You took off faster than I did." "So what? Who cares? I'm talking about you. Say I tell your pal Peach Fuzz, or Frankie DeAngelis, or any of the rats. They'll get a real kick out of it. They'll turn you upside down and check your underpants for skid marks." I loved pissing Larry off. He had a real Irish face, round as a pie plate, skin white as cream, so white you could see through it. You could see the blood running blue in his veins. But when he got mad, his white skin flushed red as a bullseye. The vein in his forehead bulged. His eyes bugged out. Sweat poured all along his hairline. Nobody could look as pissed off as Larry. Larry leaned his forehead into the corner. He huffed and puffed like he wanted to blow that end of the building down. He put his right hand against the supply closet door and his left hand on the wall over the bookcase. He started pushing. His shirt stretched tight across his back. He would have pushed the walls down if he could have, but he couldn't. Even so, it was something to see. He stomped one foot on the floor. "I'll waste you, Marino. You watch." He kicked the legs of the bookcase with the other foot. He stomped again. Then he kicked again. Then he stomped. Then he kicked. Then he stopped, because his last kick had knocked a leg off the bookcase and sent it flying up the aisle. Without its leg, the whole bookcase dropped sideways against him, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. He caught the case with his left hand and held it up. Nothing fell out of it. Nothing at all. Even all the stuff on top of it stayed put. It was a pretty heavy bookcase, but you had to hand it to him. Larry was strong. Well, if you want to find out how Larry gets out of this mess with the bookcase, if you want to find out what happens to Joe as a result of it, you'll just have to pick up a copy of Mr. Lake, which you can find in paperback or Kindle ebook format by going to the link in the description below. You can also find my other books at the end of links in the description below. You can visit my website. There is a convenient link in the description below. Or by clicking on one of the boxes to either side of my head, you can listen to me read other excerpts from this and other of my works. Well, thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you again real soon.